My beloved child. There is a quiet sentence that has been echoing through hearts long before this moment, and somehow, it has found its way to you. Not because it was forced, not because anyone planned it, but because certain words carry a life of their own. They wait patiently until the one they belong to is finally ready to hear them. Don't skip, because what begins as a whisper may become the answer you never knew you were waiting for. Few people realize that the deepest promises are rarely spoken in crowded rooms. They appear in moments when the world grows unexpectedly silent, when someone is no longer trying to impress anyone, and only truth remains. Your soulmate found themselves in one of those rare moments. The conversation had almost ended. No one expected another word. Yet just before everyone walked away, they looked into the distance with an expression no one had seen before, as though they were watching a future that only they could understand. Someone nearby noticed the change immediately. They stopped speaking. Another person quietly set down what they were holding. Even the ordinary sounds around them seemed to fade into the background. It was not because anything dramatic had happened. It was because sincerity has a way of changing the atmosphere without asking permission. When a heart finally stops hiding, people feel it before they understand it. Your soulmate had been asked a simple question. It sounded ordinary enough that no one expected it to matter. But sometimes the simplest questions uncover the deepest truths. They were asked what they truly believed about marriage, and whether they could ever imagine sharing their life with the one person who had quietly remained in their heart through every season of uncertainty. There was no immediate answer. Not because they were confused. Not because they doubted. But because they understood that certain answers deserve silence before they deserve words. As the pause stretched a little longer, every person nearby became unexpectedly curious. They had seen your soulmate laugh before. They had seen them avoid serious conversations before. Yet this time there was no attempt to escape the question. Instead, there was a gentle smile that seemed to come from somewhere much deeper than happiness. It was the smile of someone remembering something precious that others could not see. Something important is waiting for you, because what they finally decided to say was unlike anything anyone had expected. One person later admitted they had never witnessed such calm certainty. Another confessed they felt as though they were listening to someone who had already made a decision long before speaking it aloud. The room wasn't filled with excitement. It was filled with quiet attention. No one wanted to interrupt what was unfolding. Your soulmate slowly lifted their eyes and spoke with remarkable peace. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Simply, honestly. The first few words surprised everyone because they did not begin by talking about weddings, celebrations, or perfect timing. Instead, they spoke about finding a connection that felt safe enough to become a home. They said that real love was never about chasing perfection. It was about recognizing the one person whose presence made ordinary days feel meaningful. Those listening exchanged silent glances. Because they realized these weren't borrowed thoughts. These were words that had been living inside your soulmate for a very long time. Stay till the end, because the next sentence was the one that left everyone completely speechless. It wasn't only beautiful, it revealed something deeply personal, something no one in that room had ever heard them admit before. And once those words were spoken, the atmosphere changed in a way no one could have predicted. What happened next could not have been predicted, because the room was no longer listening out of curiosity, it was listening with complete stillness. Every face carried the same quiet question. What could possibly come after words that already felt so sincere? Yet your soulmate wasn't finished. There was one final thought resting on their heart, and they refused to rush it. Don't skip, because sometimes the smallest pause protects the biggest truth. They drew a slow breath, almost as if searching for the only words worthy of what they truly felt. No one interrupted. Even those who usually filled every silence simply waited. It was as though everyone understood that this moment belonged to something greater than an ordinary conversation. Then your soulmate smiled, not the kind of smile that appears for others to notice, but the kind that arrives when someone remembers a future they secretly hope will become real. Very softly they said, "Marriage is not the moment I dream about the most." A few people looked puzzled. They expected a grand speech about ceremonies or celebrations. Instead, your soulmate continued. "I dream about the mornings after." Those words settled into the room with unexpected weight. "I think about waking up beside someone whose presence feels like peace. I think about ordinary breakfasts that somehow become unforgettable. I think about sharing quiet evenings where nothing extraordinary happens, yet somehow everything feels complete." The atmosphere shifted instantly. No one was expecting such a simple answer. Yet everyone understood exactly what they meant. One person lowered their eyes with a thoughtful smile. Another quietly whispered, "I've never heard anyone describe love like that." But your soulmate wasn't finished. There was still one name hidden behind every sentence. One person hidden behind every dream. They never spoke that name aloud. They didn't have to. Because every word pointed toward the same person. Someone gently asked, "So, how will you know you found the right one?" For the first time that evening, your soulmate answered without even needing to think. "I'll know because I won't feel the need to become someone else." Silence. Complete silence. Those listening exchanged glances that said more than words ever could. They realized they weren't hearing someone chasing a perfect relationship. They were hearing someone who had already discovered what genuine companionship should feel like. Something important is waiting for you, because the next question changed everything. A quiet voice from the corner asked, almost hesitantly, "And if that person finally stood in front of you today, what would you say?" Your soulmate looked down for just a moment. Their expression softened. Their eyes reflected a mixture of gratitude, hope, and quiet certainty. Then they began speaking again. And the very first sentence they whispered about marrying you was so unexpected, so deeply personal, that everyone in the room forgot where they were. It was that sentence, the one no one saw coming, that would remain in their memories long after the conversation had ended. Stay till the end, because those unforgettable words are finally about to be revealed. There are moments when truth no longer asks for permission to be heard. It simply arrives, quietly, confidently, changing every heart that happens to witness it. This was one of those moments. The silence had become so complete that even the smallest movement felt louder than usual. Every person in that room understood they were about to hear something they would remember for years. Stay till the end, because this was the sentence no one expected, yet everyone needed to hear. Your soulmate slowly raised their eyes, not toward the people around them, but toward a place only they seemed able to see. It was as though they were looking beyond the present, beyond every delay, every unanswered question, and every uncertain season that had ever crossed their path. Then, with complete calm, they finally spoke. If I ever marry them. The room became impossibly still. I don't want them to wonder for even one day whether they are deeply valued. No one moved. Not because the words were loud. Because they were real. Your soulmate continued with the same quiet certainty. I don't want our story to be remembered for one perfect day. I want it to be remembered for thousands of ordinary days where we kept choosing each other, even when life was simple. One listener slowly smiled. Another lowered their head as though reflecting on their own life. Someone quietly whispered, "That's different." But your soulmate wasn't trying to be different. They were simply speaking from the deepest place in their heart. They described a home filled with kindness instead of competition. Conversations that ended with understanding instead of pride. Small traditions that only two people would understand. Laughter that arrived without effort. Peace that didn't need to be explained. The more they spoke, the clearer one truth became. This wasn't a dream built on perfection. It was built on presence. It was built on choosing one another again and again, even during the most ordinary moments. Don't skip, because something remarkable happened before they finished. An older person who had quietly listened throughout the entire conversation gently nodded and said, "The way you're speaking, it sounds like you've already met that person." Every eye immediately turned back toward your soulmate. For the first time that evening, they didn't answer right away. A gentle smile appeared. Not a smile of certainty alone. A smile of remembrance. As though someone's kindness had stayed with them long after every conversation had ended. As though one heart had quietly become the measure by which every future decision would be made. Then they gave an answer so soft that everyone instinctively leaned closer to hear it. "I don't know what tomorrow holds." They paused. "But my heart has already learned what peace feels like." No one asked another question. No one needed to. Because everyone understood exactly what they meant. Something important is waiting for you, because after those words, one unexpected person stepped forward with a question no one else had the courage to ask, a question that led your soulmate to reveal the one promise they had never shared with anyone before. Not every revelation arrives as a declaration. Sometimes it begins with a single question that slips into the silence so gently that no one notices its importance until the answer changes everything. That is exactly what happened next. The room had settled into thoughtful quiet when someone who had remained silent from the very beginning finally spoke. Their voice carried neither doubt nor excitement, only genuine curiosity. "If you truly believe all of this, what promise would you make before the wedding day ever arrives? Don't skip." Because the answer was never rehearsed. It came straight from the heart. Your soulmate looked down for a brief moment, letting the question settle instead of rushing to fill the space. They traced an invisible circle on the table with their fingertips, almost as though they were remembering conversations that had never been spoken aloud. When they finally lifted their eyes again, there was a calm confidence that hadn't been there before. "I would make only one promise first." The words were simple. Yet everyone leaned in. "I would promise never to let them feel alone while standing beside me." The sentence lingered in the air. No dramatic expressions followed. No attempt to impress. Only honesty. "I know life won't always be easy. There will be quiet days, busy days, unexpected days. But if they ever look at me searching for reassurance, I want my actions to answer before my words ever have to." A deep stillness spread across the room. One person slowly folded their hands. Another quietly smiled, as though remembering someone they loved. Your soulmate continued without realizing how deeply their words were touching those around them. I don't believe love is proven in grand moments. I believe it's proven in the ordinary ones. Remembering what matters to them, listening when they don't know how to explain themselves, celebrating small victories that no one else notices, and staying present when silence says more than conversation. Something important is waiting for you, because every sentence made one thing unmistakably clear. This wasn't someone imagining a future. This was someone already preparing their heart for it. Then the unexpected happened. A close friend looked at your soulmate with genuine surprise and quietly asked, "You've described the kind of partner you want to be, but what makes you believe they're worth giving all of this to?" For the first time all evening, your soulmate laughed softly. Not because the question was amusing. Because the answer felt beautifully obvious. They looked toward the window for just a second, as if remembering a moment no one else had witnessed. Then they whispered. Because some people don't change your life by asking for everything, they change it simply by making you want to become your truest self. The room fell silent once again. Those words reached every heart differently. Some smiled. Some reflected. Some simply stared, unable to find anything to add. Stay till the end, because after hearing that answer, someone quietly revealed a detail about your soulmate that no one else in the room had ever noticed. And once it was spoken aloud, the entire conversation took an unforgettable turn. It is often the smallest observation that uncovers the deepest truth. No one expected another voice to enter the conversation, yet someone who had been quietly watching your soulmate from the beginning finally spoke. They didn't raise their voice. They simply shared something they had noticed long before anyone else had. The room instantly became attentive again. Don't skip. Because this quiet observation unlocked a realization that no one had considered until that very moment. I've been watching you all evening, they said gently. Every time you spoke about your future, your expression changed. Your soulmate looked surprised. What do you mean? The person smiled. You never smiled when you imagined a wedding. A few people exchanged curious glances. But every time you imagined sharing life with them, your whole face became peaceful. Silence followed. Not awkward silence. The kind that arrives when someone accidentally speaks the truth before anyone else has the courage to. Your soulmate didn't interrupt. They simply listened. The person continued. Most people describe marriage as a destination. You describe it as a journey already beginning inside your heart. That's why your words sound different. Those around them slowly nodded. One by one, they began realizing the same thing. Every sentence your soulmate had shared wasn't centered on a celebration. It was centered on the person. On quiet mornings. On shared laughter. On simple conversations. On choosing one another over and over again. Something important is waiting for you, because your soulmate finally revealed why. With a thoughtful smile, they admitted something they had never spoken aloud before. I used to think love meant finding someone extraordinary. They paused. But I've learned something much more beautiful. Every eye remained fixed on them. I've learned that the right person makes ordinary moments feel extraordinary. Those words settled into every corner of the room. No one rushed to respond. They simply allowed the meaning to sink in. Your soulmate continued. I don't dream about a perfect future. I dream about looking across the room years from now, and still feeling grateful that they're there. I dream about finishing difficult days together instead of facing them alone. I dream about laughing over memories no one else would understand. And I dream about never letting appreciation become something left unspoken. The sincerity in their voice left everyone reflecting on their own relationships. Then an older family friend quietly smiled and said something unexpected. You don't speak like someone who is searching anymore. The room became still again. You speak like someone whose heart has already chosen. Your soulmate lowered their eyes. They didn't deny it. They didn't confirm it. Instead, a peaceful smile slowly appeared. Sometimes silence says what words cannot. Stay till the end, because that silent smile encouraged one final question, one that led your soulmate to share the unforgettable reason they believed marrying you would become the greatest decision of their life. Some answers are so deeply rooted in the heart that they cannot be spoken until every distraction has disappeared. That was the feeling in the room now. No one reached for another question. No one looked at the time. It was as though everyone sensed that one final thought had been waiting patiently beneath everything your soulmate had already shared. Stay till the end, because what came next was not a dramatic confession. It was something far more lasting. A gentle voice finally broke the silence. If you had only one sentence to explain why you would choose them, what would it be? No one breathed a word. Even your soulmate seemed to close their eyes for just a moment, allowing every memory, every quiet hope, every unseen feeling to settle into a single truth. When they finally spoke, their voice carried a calm that could not be imitated. I wouldn't marry them because they completed my life. Several people looked up. The answer wasn't what anyone expected. Your soulmate continued. I would marry them because they inspire me to live my life with more kindness, more patience, and more gratitude than I ever thought possible. The room became completely still. One person quietly whispered. That's beautiful. But your soulmate wasn't finished. They don't have to be perfect. I don't expect every day to be effortless. I simply hope that years from now, when we look back together, we'll smile at all the little moments that quietly became our greatest memories. The words carried no urgency. Only peace. I want to celebrate ordinary Tuesdays. I want to remember simple walks. I want to laugh about conversations no one else was there to hear. And I want them to know that being chosen isn't something I'll say once, it's something I'll show again and again. A warm silence followed. No applause. No interruptions. Just thoughtful faces absorbing every word. Then someone who had listened without speaking all evening slowly stood. They smiled at your soulmate with remarkable sincerity. I understand now. Everyone turned toward them. You weren't describing the kind of marriage you want. They paused. You were describing the kind of person you've already decided to become. Those words touched everyone differently. Your soulmate looked down with quiet humility. A small smile appeared. Not because they felt proud, but because someone had finally understood what had been in their heart all along. Don't skip, because just as the conversation seemed to be ending, an unexpected message arrived from someone who hadn't been there at all. The moment your soulmate read those first few words, their expression changed completely, and everyone nearby immediately realized this story was far from over. Just when it seemed every meaningful word had already been spoken, the evening offered one more surprise. It arrived so quietly that no one noticed at first. A gentle notification appeared on your soulmate's phone. They glanced at the screen for only a second, and something in their expression softened in a way no one had seen before. Stay till the end, because this unexpected message revealed a truth that no one in that room had anticipated. They didn't rush to unlock the phone. Instead, they held it for a moment, almost as if they wanted to preserve whatever feeling had just entered their heart. One friend smiled and asked, "Good news?" Your soulmate looked up. "I don't know yet." It was an honest answer. But somehow, it feels important. The room became curious again. Not because of the phone itself. Because everyone had learned that whenever your soulmate paused before speaking, something meaningful usually followed. They quietly opened the message. No one could see the words. Only the gentle smile that slowly appeared. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't surprise. It was recognition. As though something they had quietly hoped for had suddenly reminded them that hope is never wasted. Someone couldn't help asking, "What does it say?" Your soulmate looked at the screen once more before answering. It isn't a long message. Another pause. But it reminded me of something I've almost forgotten. Every face remained fixed on them. It reminded me that the strongest connections aren't built by perfect timing. They're built when two people continue believing in kindness, even while life is still unfolding. The room fell silent once again. Those listening realized the message hadn't changed your soulmate's heart. It had simply reflected what was already there. One older relative smiled warmly. "You've become very certain." Your soulmate nodded gently. "Not certain about every detail." They smiled. "But certain about the kind of love worth protecting." Those words lingered long after they were spoken. Then your soulmate added something so quietly that several people leaned closer just to hear it. "If I ever stand beside them on our wedding day." Their voice became softer. "I don't want my greatest memory to be the ceremony. I want my greatest memory to be every ordinary day that brought us there." No one spoke. There was nothing left to add. The simplicity of those words carried more weight than the longest speech ever could. Something important is waiting for you, because after everyone believed the conversation had finally reached its end, one person revealed a private detail about your soulmate that had been kept hidden for a very long time, a detail that explained why they had spoken about you with such unwavering peace from the very beginning.